Hello, welcome you to part 9 of using the Power Platform to extend finance and operations apps. Today's topic is AI Builder. My name's Christine and I'll be your moderator today. We're broadcasting this virtual event through Teams live events and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. Today's virtual event is being recorded on behalf of Microsoft Corporation. By participating in this session using Microsoft Teams, your name, email address, phone number, and/or title may be viewable by other session participants. If you do not consent to being part of the recorded session, please disconnect at this time. The recording will be available on the TechTalk's Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. If you have any questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the session, and there will be time at the end for further questions. Closed captions are available today in Spanish, French, German, Italian, Chinese, and Russian. So turn on your closed captioning, click the closed captioning button located on the lower right-hand corner of your screen. To change languages, click on the gear icon and make your choice. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Presenting today, from Microsoft, we have Rachel Profitt, the Senior Program Manager. So Rachel, over to you.
Thanks, Christine, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm super excited about AI Builder. We've put together some kind of fun demos along with some really practical demos, so hopefully you'll enjoy those. For those of you who don't know me, again, my name is Rachel Profitt. I am a fast-track solution architect based out of Denver. My contact information is here on the screen. I invite you to follow me on Twitter, connect with me on LinkedIn, or check out my blog at dynamics365lady.com. Also joining me today, I have Fife, who will be presenting some of those fantastic demos I was just talking about. So let's take a look at our objectives for today's Tech Talk. We're going to start off by introducing the AI Builder and how you can use it in an enterprise setting. We'll also describe a number of use cases for using AI Builder with your finance and operations data. I'm going to demonstrate for you how to get started using the AI Builder, and then we've got a number of examples of actual AI builders configured that we're going to show you how to use that can leverage your finance and operations data. We're also going to review some do's and don'ts for designing that AI builder and using that alongside your finance and operations information. Some things that we're not going to cover today are detailed licensing and authentication aspects or detailed aspects of Power Apps or Power Automate. We did cover Power Apps and Power Automate in much more detail in earlier sessions, so if you're interested in that, I encourage you to check those out. We will be using Power Apps and Power Automate in some of today's demonstrations. So kind of looking at the flow, we're going to start out with that introduction, switch to the use cases, getting started, those walkthroughs I was talking about, do's and don'ts, and we'll wrap up with resources and Q&A at the end. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right into an introduction of the AI Builder. So the AI Builder allows you to infuse artificial intelligence into any process or application using your business data. That data can be in the Dataverse, or formerly known as the Common Data Service, SharePoint, or in any first or third-party solutions such as Dynamics 365 Finance, Supply Chain Management, or Human Resources. Like many other Power Platform services, AI Builder is built on top of the Azure platform, but it's packaged in a simplified citizen developer first experience that doesn't require an Azure subscription or a data scientist. There are a number of pre-built models that you can use without having to train them, like sentiment analysis, translation, and the business card reader. But you can also train custom models to recognize objects in images or key information in natural languages. These capabilities include things like analyzing text for classification, key phrases, language, and sentiment. You can predict whether something will happen, extract business card information, process text from images or documents using OCR or optical character recognition. You can also read and save information from standard documents or recognize and count items in images. The great thing about all of this is that you can start to use the intelligence right away. AI Builder empowers employees to easily create automation driven by AI. Users can choose from pre-built AI models for common workflow solutions, or for more complex processes, users can create custom AI models that are tailored to their specific needs. So let's say you receive thousands of invoices every month, some by email and some by regular mail. Typically, you'll have to take the attachment from your email or scan the invoice to save it into a supplier folder, for example. Then you'll open each of them and enter the information into your accounting system to make a payment. Well, with AI Builder, you can save lots of time. First, those invoices coming by email, they're processed automatically from PDF to a folder to insert all the facts into your ERP system, like Dynamics 365 Finance. Then those coming by mail, just by snapping a picture of them with your phone or scanning them with a desktop scanner, they can go right into the correct folder and also be inserted automatically into your ERP system. So you can access your AI Builder directly from Power Apps and Power Automate Maker portals. All you'll need to do is simply navigate to the left navigation menu and select AI Builder, and then you can see all the different models that are available that you can start from, or you can create a new model from scratch. So let's go ahead and switch gears a little bit and talk about some use cases for the AI Builder. So the first kind of scenario here is the idea of prediction. With prediction, you can use your database, so like your Dynamics 365 or human resources database, and with this AI model, it will allow you to determine the likelihood of a specific business outcome. The screenshots that you see on the right here are actually from Finance Insights. So this new kind of set of features that are coming with Dynamics 365 Finance allow us to do a number of things like cash flow forecasting, putting together new budget information, or doing collections and payment predictions. So these are some examples that are provided out of the box and are coming in our roadmap that use prediction models. But some additional examples of how you might use it with finance and operations apps include on-time delivery or receipt of goods, the likelihood of returns, or of on-time payment or collections. Some examples that you might use with human resource include safety incidents or performance review and goal creation and completion. So the next type of AI model is related to forms processing. This is probably one of the most common examples that AP invoice automation that a lot of organizations are looking to automate their AP processes. The idea here is that we can read, extract, and process data from scans, emails, PDFs, and any type of image. So the most common example and examples that are provided out of the box, the expense receipt processing, which is there today with finance and operations, and on our roadmap are some additional features around AP invoice automation, but you can get started today with this as well. Some examples that you might use with human resources are automatic processing of like I-9 documents or other employment related forms that are specific to your country or region. The next use cases are around object detection and text classification. So with object detection, the idea is that we can use an AI model where we can recognize an object in an image. We can also count visual objects. So if I'm looking at a picture that has a bunch of soda cans, I could count how many soda cans are in that image. Some examples of how you might use object detection are cycle counting items in a warehouse or doing retail shelf counting automatically just from images that you might snap on a mobile device. Another example is quality checking manufactured products from images. So you might be looking at images to look for specific details in those images and make sure that they're installed correctly or anything like that. You might also use it to identify returned products. Oftentimes products arrive at the warehouse and they have no label or information about it, and you might be trying to figure out what this product is. So just by simply snapping a quick picture of it, we can identify what that object is and determine the exact item number, for example. The next example is around text classification. So with text application or classification, you have the ability to build applications that review, tag, and classify large volumes of text. It allows you to track sentiment, which can help improve customer experiences and help you mine through valuable insights. So examples of how you might use this include analyzing text from customer service emails and cases in customer service. You might also analyze performance reviews and goals in human resources. You could also process text in an image for a hazmat tag out in your warehouse, just as a few examples. So there are a number of additional pre-built models, and this is not actually even a complete list of all of them, but I just want to quickly review how you might use some of these. So the first one is the business card reader. The idea here is that you might be at a trade show and getting prospects, or even if it's like a supplier show, potential vendors that you might want to work with, or you might be at a job recruiting fair and you want to take the business card or a resume or something like that that is provided from someone and scan it and pull all that information out and stick it into your ERP system. The next example is sentiment analysis. So sentiment analysis is the idea that we can derive from text that we analyze if it's positive, negative, neutral, or a mixed sentiment. It's often done in social media, but it could be done with customer reviews or any text that you want to analyze. So examples of how you might do this is looking at customer service cases or performance reviews as another example. Key phrase extraction is another pre-built model that you can use, and the idea here is that we can extract those main points and key phrases from text documents. An example of how you might use this is in order creation or actions from emails. So if somebody sends an email into your customer service, email address or your accounts payable email address, for example, and wants to know the status of their payment or the status of their order, you could extract that text and get that key phrase extraction, and then use Power Automate to automatically go find that document, find that payment, whatever it might be, and automatically respond with the information that's required instead of a user having to go in and manually read that email, go find the information, and then respond to the email. Text translation is another great example. You're going to see an example of this a little bit later on. But this idea is that we can convert text that's passed in from one language to another language. So the example here is translating text for a product description. We also have the ability to do text recognition, which allows you to recognize text that's embedded. It could be printed or handwritten text into a document or an image into a machine readable set of characters. So the example here is like a quality test result. So if those quality test results were handwritten, by the warehouse workers, we could extract those out and put those into the system. HR forms is another example. The hazmat tag example where, someone takes a picture of that hazmat tag and we can extract text from that as well and determine what our next best step is going to be. So switching gears again, I'm going to now talk a little bit about how to get started with your AI Builder. Now that you've heard a lot of different ways that you might use AI Builder in your organization. So for the example that I'm going to be showing today, we're going to be using object detection. So you start in Power Apps and you click on the button to create a new one and you give it a name and click create. So it's a pretty simple and straightforward process. So again, in this example, I chose object detection, type in a name, and then click create. The settings and the exact steps for some of your different types of models will be slightly different. So it's important to keep that in mind. But you'll notice that all of the models have a very wizard-like experience. So after you've created the model, the next step is to select your object name. So you'll click on the button and then start typing in the information. First, you'll need to select the entity that you want to map this data to, and then the field from the entity that you're going to be mapping. So in this example, we're using the product. So you can see I search for that product entity, I click on it. In this case, we're searching for the name. So that's what we're going to be mapping to, is the name of the product. And then I select which products I'm going to be identifying. You can select multiple and then you click next. The next step in the process is to start adding your images. So once you've determined what you want to identify, now you need to add images. You can see here we're browsing to those images. You do need a minimum of 15 images to train a new AI model for the same image. And then after you do that, you'll upload those, and then we can start the tagging process. So that's our next video here. So once you've uploaded those images, you'll need to go through one by one and tag those. So you can see here that we're drawing a square around it and tagging it. Now, if I had multiple objects that I was detecting, you can detect multiple objects in the same one. So we basically just repeat this process for each of the images that we have uploaded. Once you've finished that process, then you can move on to the next step in the process. So after you've done all the tagging and you've tagged at least 15 images, you're ready to train the model. So you'll click the next button and select the train button. Depending on the number of images and objects that you're identifying, the training process can take several minutes or several hours if you've uploaded thousands of images to train your model, for example. But you'll just want to wait. When you're done tagging, you just click done tagging, click next, and then click train. Now, after you're done and you've clicked on the training, you're going to want to go to the details page. You can navigate to that from the left-hand navigation pane by going to models. And here you can see the details about your model. So you can see exactly how the performance of your model is looking. If it's fully trained, what the score is. And you can also click on some additional links over there to help improve the performance of your model. Now, once you're done, you're going to want to perform a quick test. Here, when you perform a quick test, you have the ability to upload another image and test it and see if the system is able to identify that object that you're trying to detect. So here you can see we've uploaded another example, and it identified that particular tea product in that quick test. If it didn't work, then you can go back and retrain your model and add more images to continue training and improving your model. Now, after you're done with the quick test, you're going to publish your model. So you'll click on that publish button. You can navigate back to that again by going to the AI Builder and then clicking on that publish button. So a very simple process. Again, depending on the size of your model, that publish process might take a little bit longer. Once you're done publishing your model, you can start creating apps. So you can click on that button to create an app. Depending on the type of model you're using, that create an app button may or may not be available. Sometimes you'll have a create a flow button. And sometimes you'll have both. It just depends on which model you're using. But you'll click on that button to create an app and then select which template you want to use. So in our case, we're just doing a simple Canvas app. You give your app a name and then you click create. This will open up and create a basic app for you. Once you go in there, it will automatically insert your first object for you. So you can also manually insert these if you're creating your Power App manually. So you go to the Insert tab and then click on the AI Builder and choose the object detection in this case. But you'll notice there's other options there depending on the type of model. Then you can search for your model, reposition and size these things. When you click on detect, in this case, I'm going to go browse to an image that I want to identify, click open, and then it'll identify for me the object that it has found in that particular image. You also have the ability to use models in a Power Automate flow. So when you create Power Automate flow, you have the ability to insert AI Builder type objects. So in this example, this screenshot here, you can see the process and save information from forms AI Builder step, and we're passing in an attachment that comes from an email in this example. And then obviously all the steps that you do after that are really kind of up to you in terms of what you want to do. So with that, I am going to hand us over to Murray, who's going to do a walkthrough of several examples.
Okay. So we put together a number of different examples that go into a lot more detail. And the first example that we're going to look at is the object detection. And this is a bigger example than the one that Rachel showed earlier on. And what it's doing is it's actually going out and recognizing Lego parts. And I've got probably around about 20 different parts that I'm recognizing. And that means I need to have a larger data set. And so I've got nearly 300 parts that are being recognized already. But say, for example, I want to extend out the model and further refine it, then all I need to do is select a subset of the parts. I'm only selecting, I think, 5 parts in this case because of all of the processing that we need to do. But I'm going to pull in these parts, and you can see that it uploads the parts, and now I've got 304 images to work through. Now, all of these images here have already been trained, but I want to go out and add more knowledge and say for this 1x1 brick that I can, one brick plate, I can go out and identify it, and here's another part that we're going to recognize, and you can see that I'm going out and classifying them individually. Now, notice that the tagging on the right is actually showing us how many samples we have processed. So as Rachel said before, we need to have a minimum of 15 images that we're classifying. And I've got some of those, I've got 26 images, some of them I've got just 15, but it all depends on the training set that you have. So now that I've gone and further embellished my training set, I can go through and do the training. So this is going to process all of the images that we have, the old ones and the new ones, and give us a capability score or a performance score. Now, something that's interesting here is that this has got an 82% accuracy. Some of the guidance is that you don't actually want to have 100% accuracy because there may be some bias in there. But as you can see here, I've gone out and I've recognized the brick, and that's great. So now what we can do is we can say, I want to use this. Now, I want to start off here and create a simple Power App that could be the start of a object recognition tool for within Dynamics. So I went out and I said, I want to use the model, and I've got the detection panel showing up. Now I'm going to make a couple of changes here just to make it look prettier, so it's not just the normal blue boxes that you see. And I've got my detection pane. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a gallery. Now, the reason why I need to do this is I can go out and detect the object, but we want to find out what it's actually detecting. And when it runs, it's going to return back a list of all the objects that it found in the image. And I can go out and link that gallery back up to the object recognizer. And then there's only one thing I need to do here, and that is I need to add in a label so that I can actually see what's returned back. So I'm just going to plonk that in there, do a little bit of fine tuning to make it look nice again. As you're making these apps, it's always good to not just use the default settings, make it pretty and usable for the users. And that was actually one of our tips on the Power Apps that we had in one of the earlier sessions. So the final thing I can do is I can say I want to look at this item, and then I want to get the name of whatever is being tagged. So in probably around about a minute, I've gone out and created this app, and if I play it, then I can go out. In this case, because it's running here on the desktop, then I can upload an image. And I've pulled in a tile, and this is a 1x2 flat tile. So it's gone out and recognized that for us. So what we've done here is we went through the object recognition, and we can get the part code, we can get the description, and from there we could go back into Dynamics and look up inventory and look up a number of other things. So that's a quick example of how the object detection works in a more elaborate scenario. So we'll move on to the next example, and this example is for receipt processing. Now this is, I'm going to show two different things. I'm going to show uploading a receipt just to test it. So this is interesting because inside of AI Builder, you can go out and test the models. And you can notice here that this is a receipt that I had, and it's breaking out the receipt down to the line item on the receipt as well. So this is to illustrate how the receipt processing works. Now, the next step, though, is we're going to show how this is actually used inside of Dynamics. So Rachel, do you want to move on to the next? So this is the receipt processing model is being leveraged by finance in the expense management. So if you notice here, I can go out and I can upload that same receipt that I had inside the new version of the expense management. It's going to pull in the receipt, but then down the bottom there's going to be some metadata, so it knows what the date was, it knows what the dollar amount was, and it's got the description of it. I'm just going to classify this as a meal and save that. And now that I return back to my expense, then we can see that all of that information has been pulled in. So the receipt processing is actually being used as just part of finance and supply chain. So the next example that we're going to do is the form processing. Now this, what I'm going to do here is show the beginning part of examples that we went through earlier on inside of the inside of Power Apps, because we've talked about this invoice processing and AP invoice automation. And as I go through this, I'm going to specify what fields I'm going to try to look for in my invoice. So you can see here that I'm pulling out the subtotal, the tax, the due date. I'm also saying I want to know the vendor name, the payment terms, the payment methods. Now, also, I'm going to have a table in here. And what this is going to allow me to do is define what the columns are that I'm going to recognize inside of the AP invoice when I pull it in. Now, this is key because this allows us to go out and get our core information. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm creating a collection, and I've got a number of invoices that I'm going to use as my sample. Now, we have to have 5 invoices. The more invoices you have, the better. And also, we can go out and now create collections of invoices if we have different versions of them. So, for example, we've created examples where we recognize English invoices and Spanish invoices, and the system is going to go out and find some of the fields as we go out and tag this. So notice it detected the table and worked out what the lines are. And then we go out and we tag all of the different items that we want to recognize. So right now it hasn't recognized many of the fields. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a prompt and pick all of the fields that I have here. So we're going through, I'm going to select the totals that we have there. Notice how I'm going out and selecting the field, and if it's not quite finding the right field, then I can go out and select an area like I'm doing with the phone number for the whole item. I'm also going to tag that table, so that I can go out and I can get the item numbers and all the fields as well. So this first item, I had to do a little bit of work. But as I go through and use more of the invoices for the classification, then it's going to be a little bit smarter and recognize some of them along the way. So I'm working through, and again, I've got to have at least 5 invoices here for the processing. And you can see them going through this really quickly and picking out all the fields that weren't selected. Now, if there are variations of invoices, then rather than having them all here within the invoice processing, you can go out and, again, create more collections and train them. So I've gone out, I've trained this. It's going through and training. Sometimes this could take a minute or so, but for us, I think it just takes a couple of seconds. And now what I can do is I can take that model, I can test it with another invoice. Notice now it's going out and finding all of the fields that I had, including the table information. And then the final thing I'm going to do here is publish it. Now, we're not going to continue on to the full AP invoice recognition because we actually talk about that in the earlier sessions. But now what we would do is we'd create I'd create a Power Automate flow that goes out and waits for invoices to come in. Maybe it gets dropped into OneDrive, maybe it does some other things. But it will then go and grab the invoice, ingest it into this model, and then it will return back all of those key fields that then we can go out and create pending invoices directly within Dynamics. So this is more of the back end of how we go out and actually train an AP invoice form recognition model. So let's continue on, Rachel. So the final item is to look at text translation. Now this allows us to go out and translate text. And the example that we're going to use for this is within Dynamics, we have the product translations. And I want to go out and I'm going to create a Power App that allows me to automatically translate these. So within a Power Automate flow, you can select the text and then you can select the language. You can see all of the language that we've got, that we have here. So let's translate it into Klingon. And it's as easy as that. We're going to return back the translation directly here from the Power Automate flow. So now this is just the engine that does the translation. But what I did is I went out and I created a Power App. Now the Power App does a couple of things. We pass through the part code or the product number from Dynamics, which you'll see in a second. And then we can go out and we can select the language that is being translated. This is going out and calling that Power Automate flow. Now there's a little bit of extra code that's down there for the lookup, but as you can see, I've got my translation into Chinese, and I've got a final item here, which is the save option, that after I've done the translation, then it's going to use the patch function and push it back to the standard data entities that we have for the product translations. Now, this Power App just by itself isn't it's nice, but it's not super useful because we need to link it back to our products. And for that, what we did is we actually put that in to Dynamics as a Power App add-in, which is the next example that we're going to look at. So here I'm inside of the products, and I'm looking at a product. I haven't done any translations yet, so we can go out and we can see that for Spanish and also for Chinese, there are no product names in there. So what I've done is I went out and added the Power App as an extension. It's going to go out and run run my Power App, the first thing it does is it takes that product number and finds the default description. The second thing it does is it goes out and translates that default description into Spanish and also into simplified Chinese. And then when I press the save button, it went out and updated that and added it directly into Dynamics and did the translation for us. Now we could extend this out and have a whole slew of translations that we're performing along the way. But this is, I thought this was a useful example and also something that was relatively simple to put together. I think I worked on it for around about half an hour and was able to get this full flow and Power App linked into finance and supply chain. So that showing the language translation this way, we thought was a pretty cool way to do it. And I think that is the end of our walkthroughs, Rachel.
Yes. So we want to talk a little bit about some of our do's and don'ts, and then we'll wrap up with a few resources, and we've got a number of questions that we'll address as well. So starting out with some do's and don'ts. So some things to do. Make sure that when you use forms in a form recognizer, that you use forms or invoices, documents, etc., whatever you're using, images that have different values in each field. You don't want to use the same form over and over. That's not going to be a great way to train your model. You'll also want to make sure that you're using a variety of images, text, whatever type of model you're using to train those models. You'll also want to make sure that you're using Dataverse tables for training data with text classification models. And make sure that when you set up those tables in your Dataverse, that you define proper permissions on those tables. Some things not to do when you're working with AI Builder. Don't use the same images, the same text, the same forms, and so on to test with that you use to train the model. So when you train the model, when we're doing form recognition, you have to have a minimum of 5. But when you test it, you're going to need at least a 6th image to test with, preferably more if you have them available, but you don't want to test with the same images that you trained with. You also don't want to train your models with data that's going to be different from your production data. So don't use unrealistic made up examples. Use actual examples. So like if you're doing AP invoice automation, take actual invoices from your vendors and your suppliers that you're going to, that are similar to what are going to be used with your production data. And also don't skip out on cleaning up your data for training the models. So especially with like text classification, or if you're doing an object detection and you're kind of identifying a list of products, make sure that the data that you're starting with of what you're going to be detecting is cleaned up. You don't have duplicates in it and so on, because that can complicate things when you're trying to work with it. Now, depending on the type of model that you're working with, there are different best practices for each one of those. One of the great things about the AI Builder is that when you start a new model, there's a tab at the top called Best Practices. You saw it very briefly in one of Murray's demos, but I wanted to point this out. Every single model has a best practices tab. So when you start to create it, there's a tab up there where you can see what those best practices are, the do's and the don'ts. So in this case, with text translation, right, don't use text entries that have full sentences. And don't use text entries that have a lot of sentence fragments or one-word sentences. Obviously, the recommendations and best practices for each model are going to be slightly different. So I encourage you to make sure that you're familiar with that tab, click on it, and use the guidance that's out there for each one of the models. New models are being released constantly. Actually, a new model was actually just released this week that actually for the form recognition, there's one that is actually specific to invoice recognition, much like the receipt processing. We now have invoice processing, which actually makes some of that invoice processing much easier, and you don't have to do all the circling and mapping like you saw in today's demonstration. So that's a new one. It was just released on preview. I encourage you to check out that new one. Now, the kind of last set of tips that I want to talk about, and we kind of briefly mentioned it, was model performance. So typically, higher accuracy scores mean that you have better model performance. But you'll want to keep in mind that an extremely high score could indicate issues with the relevance or the bias of your training data. You'll need to determine what the appropriate level of accuracy for your intended use of the AI model is. If you have a score that is, oh, sorry, I clicked accidentally. If you have a score that's less than 50%, and it's consistently less than 50%, that probably means there's something wrong with your model. It's wrong more often than a simple guess would be. So you'll want to check that your data fields are mapped correctly, or if you're using the wrong data. If your scores are consistently greater than 50%, that means your model performs better than a guess. And the higher the score, the more accurate the model is. If your score is sitting right at 100% or very close to 100%, that could indicate that there's bias in the training data or that a field is correlating directly to the answer. So we'll wrap up today with a few different resources, and we've got a number of questions that we'll review. So we encourage you to try out the AI Builder. It's available with Power Apps and Power Automate. Some links here on the screen for you. We also have a number of videos that are available, along with 2 blogs that you can use to learn more about the AI Builder, available with Power Automate and Power Apps. So with that, we're going to go ahead and switch over to questions. So the first question that I see in here, do you consider in the AI Builder roadmap a way of manually tagging tables in the form processing models when they're not automatically detected? Yeah, so that's a great question. Right now, if it doesn't detect a table, there's not a way to tag that as being a table. That is in our roadmap to be able to do that. I'm not sure timing of that, but I will tell you, if you're doing invoice recognition, I encourage you to try out the new, just hot, fresh off the press this week, the new invoice recognition one, which actually kind of takes a lot of that manual work out of it. We had a question come in, how many invoices per minute can be processed? That's a great question. I think it depends a little bit on the technique in which you're processing them. It's not necessarily so much a limit of the AI Builder. It's more likely going to be a limitation of the Power Automate flow, API limits and throttling that may exist there. So I don't know, Murray, if you've got any advice on that or anything to add to that one.
Not really. The experience that we've found is usually it takes about a second just to process the invoice. And as we've been sort of working through like the AP invoice automation examples that we've been building.
Yeah. So someone shared, kind of along the same lines as the previous one. In our experiencing, the form processing did not always recognize all the lines from the incoming invoice. For some PDFs with the little space between the lines, it failed to treat the lines section as a table. Are there any plans to improve the AI capabilities? Again, this is something that we are definitely continuing to invest in. If you've got specific examples where it's not recognizing, I do encourage you to report those issues so that we can continue to improve on those AI models. But I also would encourage you in this particular example, especially if it's an invoice, try the new invoice recognition model. Which, you don't have to do the manual tagging anymore. It's a lot more like the receipt processing and you don't have to train the model. It's a pre-built model. So definitely try that one out and see if that works for you. If it's not an invoice that you're trying to process, then you might still run into those same issues, but keep reporting those issues so that we can continue improving on that. We did have a question come in about how the AI license works. I will see if I can find a link here for you to the details about how AI Builder licenses work. Did we have any other questions that came in? I think we had some, maybe Murray, that you answered. Do you want to review those?
Yeah, so some of the other items that came through is one of the questions was, are we leveraging some other tool to go out and do the OCR and the forms processing? And the quick answer to that is no. So everything that we're doing here is built on the Azure Cognitive Services and the services that have really been around for a while. The forms processing itself has been available. The Power Platform just makes it a lot easier to access. And there was another question that, or someone asked for if they could get the language translation Power App, and Rachel and I talked about that earlier on, and we haven't put it up into a repository yet, but we can package that up and make it available to everyone later on. Another question came in, and it was around the AP invoice automation example. So, and that was, can we go out and take that invoice and then attach it into Dynamics? And the quick answer to that is yes, we can. There's a specific data entity that that's available, that's been available for a while, that you can use, and all you have to do is package up the PDF file and then add some additional entity information into it, and then that can be imported in through data management, really through a web service call. And we've got examples of how to do that using Power Automated. That's what we're doing with our examples.
Yeah, in our Power Apps session, we shared a link to a solution that you can download and install that does that whole process end to end. I'll see if I can try to find that link here and share it again, because if you download that sample app and start from that, it does a lot of it. If you're building your own, I believe the entity that you're looking for is called vendor invoice document attachment, or just attachment. It starts with vendor invoice. There's a vendor invoice header, a vendor invoice line, and then the third one is called like vendor invoice attachment, I believe, is the exact name of that one. So that's definitely something that you can, try out on your own.
Another question that came in talks about processing multiple invoices from multiple vendors. So how do we handle that? And the one option is to use the new invoice processing template that's inside Power Apps. But also, if we look back at the videos when I went out and I built my form processing, then there's now a collections option. In the past, what we had to do is we had to go out and really create 10 different models that get processed. As we understand it, the collections allow you to add different invoice types from different vendors into that collection. So one of the examples that we'll probably create is that if we're recognizing a hotel invoice folios, then even within a chain, they're slightly different. So Marriott Courtyard is different from the Fairmont Inn and so on. So what we can do is we can create a model that recognizes all of them, but we break them out into the collections, and then the collection will be recognized, or the matching collection will be identified as we're going out and doing the invoice processing. So there's now actually a better way that we can go out and train the model, but we do need to train the invoice models for the separate vendors if the format is different.
Yeah. I think that was all of the questions that we had come in for today. We'll give it one more moment here. I think we've addressed everything, but I'll go ahead and hand it over to Christine and Peggy to wrap us up today and talk a little bit about our survey. So thank you everyone for joining.
Yeah, and thank you for your presentation. I've posted a link to the survey in the Q&A panel, and would like your feedback on today's session and hear what you'd like to see in the future events. The survey scores are on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible. And we thank you everybody for your participation. And as a reminder, this recording will be available on the TechTalks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. So this concludes today's broadcast, and I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters and to our audience. Stay safe and have a great rest of your day or evening or wherever you are.